Hello and welcome to this game review of a Jose Capablanca game. And for the beginners out there who are not familiar with Jose Capablanca, he was the third world chess champion from, I believe, 1921 to 1927. And he lost his title to the fourth world chess champion, Alexander Alekhine, in 1927. And this game takes place in 1928, shortly after Capablanca lost his title. Some people felt that Capablanca he was such a great player that maybe he was winning his games too easily, and he got a little bit lazy when he went up against Alekhine. And Alekhine, known to be a great tactical player, but he really studied hard and came up with great openings to play against Capablanca, and that probably gave him an edge. So in this game, Capablanca with the black pieces plays Efim Bogoljubov. Not sure if I pronounced that correctly, but this was a great player with the white pieces, and he begins with d4. And Capablanca responds with the flexible knight to f6, waiting to see what his opponent will do next. So now we have c4, just grabbing more of the center and some space over here on the queen side. Capablanca plays e6, and we could have a possible Nimzo Indian. With this move, the bishop could possibly go here. So let's see how things continue. Well, we have knight to f3, avoiding the Nimzo Indian. And this variation apparently is called an anti-Nimzo Indian variation. All right, so it has just transposed into the queen's Indian defense, where a king's Indian defense is when this pawn pushes here and the bishop fianchettos on the king side. So here we do that on the queen side. All right, knight to c3 is now played, and the game continues with the bishop fianchettoing, aiming down through the center and towards towards Capablanca's opponent's king side. So the game continues with more development by both sides here. The bishop is pinning the knight to the queen. And so that pin is broken and Capablanca is ready to castle kingside. So the game continues with the e-pawn just pushing up here. And now the queen can cover this knight, in case the bishop decides to take and bust up the pawns. Now the queen can recapture here and avoid that. Also, with this e3 move, it fortifies the d-pawn, allows the bishop to develop. So Capablanca, a great endgame player, he starts trading off pieces. See, now we have the bishop is under attack, the knight is under attack. So it looks like a lot of pieces will be traded off, and we'll see just how good Capablanca is in the endgame. So the pieces start flying off the board here. Now this knight that was under attack drops back, attacking the bishop. So the bishop just retreats back here. And now we have an interesting move. The computer says this is best. The bishop develops here, allowing possible castling to the king side, but the bishop could take this pawn here. But of course, if that were taken, we could have an attack of that bishop. And then how might things play out? I mean, I guess we could take a look at it. Now in the game, we just had this queen move, and the computer does say that it would have been better to go ahead and take that pawn. So I guess we can take a look at that. And like I said, the best response, of course, would be to move that rook, target the bishop, and then it looks like the only way for black to keep an edge is to just drop the bishop all the way back So, something like this. And then the rook could capture here. And now black can no longer castle kingside. So that may be why Capablanca avoided that variation. So in the game, we had the queen developing and aiming at this pawn. So what does white do here? He protects the pawn and at the same time attacks this unprotected bishop here. So, if you're playing against Capablanca, even another great chess master, you generally have to be very careful if you're going to trade down into an endgame against Capablanca, who was known as one of the greatest endgame players in chess history. So here we have a recapture, developing the queen, and if we look at things, I guess you could say white is slightly ahead in development. 2 pieces developed, and black only has the queen developed. And also, there's an attack here on this rook, but Capablanca just blocks that. And now we have the queens attacking one another. And of course, Capablanca, the great endgame player, he has no fear of trading off more material. This does open up the H file here for this rook. But Capablanca, he does not castle because now we're pretty much into an endgame. A lot of pawns on the board and only a pair of knights and then the rooks. So it's very important when there are not many pieces on the board to activate your king. You have to use your king in these end games, and that can make a world of difference. So here we have the doubled pawns, and the first lead pawn is pushed forward. The game continues with this move here, which blocks the H file. What will Capablanca's opponent do now? Well, he decides to press his pawn forward here, restricting the knight, preventing the knight from jumping forward with this fork threat, which, of course, would fork the king and the rook here. So the game continues with Capablanca slowly repositioning his pawns here. He pushes this pawn forward, maybe with a future threat of pushing the other pawn here. So Capablanca's opponent does likewise, activates the king, moves that king up and a little bit closer to the action here. So the game continues with Capablanca getting behind a pawn that he perhaps plans to push forward here. So when there are so many pawns on the board here, and you have no half open or open files for your rooks, you want to put them behind pawns that you plan to push forward, that may be exchanged, and that could open things up and activate your rooks. So that is ignored for the moment by Capablanca's opponent. He tries to improve the position of his knight, centralizing it, and Capablanca just follows through with his plan. He's trying to open up some lines for his rooks here. So now we have his opponent not wanting to allow that, pushing forward. So now the pawn presses up here, attacking the knight. It can be captured by en passant here, so let's see what Capablanca's opponent does. He does, in fact, capture en passant, and now Capablanca just recaptures here, and the game continues with the f-pawn moving forward, gaining space on the king side. And so it's going to become a battle of pawns. Some knight maneuvering will occur, and of course the rooks will be fighting for this open file here, it looks like. So that is ignored for the moment. Capablanca's opponent tries to get some counterplay here on the king side. He pushes forward, attacking. Capablanca ignores that, trying to grab the open file. We have a threat of a check here. So the king steps up to try and prevent that rook from penetrating into the position. But now Capablanca, who had a knight on the edge of the board, generally you don't want to do that unless you have a good plan to bring that knight back towards the center, which Capablanca does here. Of course, he's attacking this pawn, threatening to check the king. So rook protects the pawn here, stopping that threat. But the computer does not like that. Apparently, it would have been better, and I believe this was the first inaccuracy of the game. So it would have been better to just press forward here with this move, trying to chase that knight out of there. And something quite interesting here. It looks like it would be better to just leave the knight there and counterattack White's knight. So then, what's the option here? Knight to g3 retreating or pressing forward? Most likely, the knight would press forward here and onto this outpost, and at the same time, Capablanca's knight is under attack. But that would allow this move, attacking here, and then, if this knight is captured, then the rook could capture over here, of course. So, that is what the computer recommends: capture, and the rooks are ready to double up here. So you would probably have to stop that. The rooks would double up anyway, and we would have some exchanges. So, this is how the game could have gone, and it would have been much more even. So now we'll go back to the position where this knight jumps up here, threatening the pawn, and this is where the inaccuracy was made, and we'll see why here. So Capablanca pushes forward, attacking the knight. The knight drops back here instead of moving to that outpost, similar to what we saw in that example of how the game could have played out. So this move could help block the scope of the rooks if they double up on the c file. The game continues with rook moving up, and Capablanca does prepare to double his rooks. So now we have a pawn capture, recapture, and another inaccuracy here. This kind of gives up a pawn. It does break up the pawns, and then Capablanca will be left with two doubled pawns here. But it looks like the best thing would have been instead rook at h to c1, maybe preparing to double these rooks up here. So the game continues with that move, the inaccuracy. Capablanca captures. His opponent targets the pawn, and we just have another inaccuracy. So it looks like Capablanca's opponent is just faltering in the endgame here. And let's see how Capablanca takes advantage of it. Capablanca is not quite winning yet, but after this move, he's almost the equivalent of 2 pawns ahead, even though he is really just 1 pawn ahead at the moment. So the game continues with the king protecting this pawn, holding on to the material, and now we have the rook dropping back, and yet again another inaccuracy. It looks like it would have been better to just go ahead and double the rooks up on the H file. Or no, actually, computer prefers dropping this rook all the way back. So the game continues with Capablanca doubling his rooks up. And now we have the knight dropping back here, where it can threaten to reposition back up to the b4 square. So Capablanca just prevents that. And now this knight is really kind of blocked out here. I mean, I guess it could just go back to where it was. So the game continues with a rook check. The king steps over to the side, and a pawn presses forward. Yet again, another inaccuracy by Capablanca's opponent. This move is understandable. You know, it keeps the king from being able to come forward here and gains a little bit of space over here. So now Capablanca retreats back. He has the rook battery here, which could try and jump down here to the 7th rank. Always a good idea with your rooks if you're able to do that. Well, I shouldn't say always a good idea, but generally a good idea. Because from there you can infiltrate into your opponent's position. A lot of times there'll be pawns on the 7th rank that you can target, but here there's only one at the moment. So the knight tries to block the rook battery from penetrating into the position. But yet again, another inaccuracy, and Capablanca is almost winning now. The computer prefers rook to f2, which would have guarded that c2 square, preventing the rooks from coming in. But now we have a pawn attack. Capture, recapture. The knight is under attack and retreats back. Not the best square here. Looks like knight to a4 might have been better. From there, the knight could have jumped onto this outpost, blocking the rook battery, perhaps targeting this pawn. So the game continues with rook to c2. Finally, Capablanca grabs that 7th rank. And then we have his opponent trying to immediately get rid of that valuably placed rook there. So the game continues with the pawn just backing the rook up. We have rook to a1, grabbing the open file. Now the knight jumps onto the outpost, targeting the rook, and it's starting to look bad. Well, even worse. Pretty much Capablanca's opponent is losing at this point. Material-wise, Capablanca's only ahead one pawn, but look at these rooks. The rooks are activated here on the open file with a battery. The knight is on a great outpost, much better than this knight back here. And Capablanca's opponent's rooks are kind of uncoordinated here. So the rook sidesteps the attack of the knight. Now we have rook pressing forward, guarding this pawn, preventing maybe an attack here on the pawn. So the game continues with rook protecting here, trying to relieve the knight of guard duty. Although, the rook would be guarding that as well through the position. And also, look, we can't exchange here, or Capablanca's opponent can't exchange rooks on the 7th rank, because then, well, I guess it would be possible, but it's kind of tricky here. We could take a look at that. So if we go back, what would happen if we have a capture here? Well, yeah, this would not work out too good because then you could just capture with the other rook. And it looks like a mate and 2 would be in the works. So if we go back here, sorry, I apologize. All right, so here we go. We have this move. Now, Capablanca steps forward here, and it's starting to look really bad for this king, which is very trapped in this position. So we have that move being played. Apparently Capablanca's opponent's not sure what to do. So I wanted to take a look at this move here. Well, that would just allow rook takes c2 with a mate and 2. Apparently, it would not be as good to capture with the pawn. But if you have this, now things are looking crazy here because there are 3 different ways for a mate in 1. So let's see here. D takes e5. That would allow rook to d2 mate. So that's one way. What's the other possibility? Knight to f2 check. Oh, excuse me. Well, I don't know. That doesn't look too good. If you move this knight, then the knight would just capture. Knight captures knight with mate. What's the other option? Knight up to c3. That would allow what? Oh, this move again, of course. So anyway, it's looking bad for the opponent. Before I get sidetracked here, let's finish this out and see how Capablanca ends it. So he brings the rook up. Now we have his opponent trying to get some counterplay, and the game ends with this move right here, leading to a mate in 1, because the knight is checking Capablanca's knight is checking his opponent. And what can be done about this? Well, if you were to go ahead and just capture with the pawn, well then, once you capture here, we have e4 check. If the rook captures here, if the rook captures, same thing, e4 check. So the king is in check by the knight. King can't move anywhere because of this rook battery and all his pieces. So once that knight is taken out, we'll have this checkmate. So let's take a look and see what the accuracy rating was here. So Capablanca's opponent played with an 85.2% accuracy versus 97.8% by Capablanca. So pretty outstanding by Capablanca, who is one of the greatest chess players of all time. And his opponent just had too many inaccuracies, 9 inaccuracies versus 1 by Capablanca. And, great game by Capablanca. So, feel free to leave any comments. Let me know what you think. Like and subscribe to support the channel if you haven't already. Thank you for watching and have a super chess day.